Okay, everybody. This is going to be my version of our final project video. So, let's get started. First off, Kim Kafina was very gracious. I've been under lockdown for several months now, since February 5th. So she gave me a lot of leeway in how to do this. However, what my plan is to talk to you a little bit in a flipped learning model, which is the new normal, and then go over a couple of the challenges I faced this year, because largely my coaching experience was defined by its challenges, and then show you a couple of artifacts. However, I've practiced this 4 times today. Twice the video got deleted because of internet problems, China. And the other 2 times, it averaged 27 minutes. So from now on, I'm going to kind of stop meta narrating and just get right to it. And hopefully, everybody can keep up. So let's get to it. This year's Daystar Academy, that's the school that I've been working at all year. And the title of this presentation is Double Agency and Democracy in Coaching, because this is what I saw as what I learned were the two key elements in terms of my mode of operation at the school and what the school needs. So I'm going to talk to you about the context, some of the compromises I had to make, ironically, some of the positive influences of COVID-19, how COVID-19 and the pandemic and the new need for online teaching actually had a positive impact on the culture of coaching at the school, and then maybe some guesses about what's coming in the future. So, things you need to know. Daystar Academy is a private Chinese school in Beijing. It's a new growing school. It's the secondary school that's growing into a full secondary school. And of course, there are going to be growing pains with that. And one of the growing pains, which I could go in much more depth about, is that a culture of fear and non-dialogue has developed at the school. The last administration was not very forthcoming with information and didn't solicit teachers for their point of view on things, and this has created a particular culture. And then the way that this came into my life was last year. I'm pretty sure that Daystar was scrambling for an MYP coordinator late in the year, in March or so, and I had to leave my last school because of some interesting situations there. So I was also looking for a new position late in the year. This is the recipe for disaster, right? So what I was hired as was an MYP coordinator and instructional coach, and I thought my mission was to come in and really develop the kind of like thought sets, the thinking of MYP, so as to build the DP program and bring in inquiry learning and ATLs and things like that. The reality was I was supposed to kind of be another cog in the wheel for what is actually a common core state standards driven school, with a very top-down model of leadership. So, in fact, at one point, very early on in the year, I was actually asked, once they realized what I was about, and I always say that I don't think that they really read my resume correctly. I was actually asked to stop speaking about inquiry, project-based learning, innovation, and authentic assessments, because the way the school was run and the way that the teachers were enculturated, I was told that that kind of thinking and talking would be seen as subversive. So I could go on and on and on. So I'd like to say that this year has been defined what I call the Daystar dialectic. At Daystar, there's a very fixed mindset. It is anti-inquiry, anti-innovation, and anti-dialogue. And again, I've given you some of the reasons why, and I could stay on this slide for quite a while. So I attempted to break into that, especially the lack of dialogue and the lack of independence of teachers and contributions from teachers, by starting a PLC that I told teachers was voluntary, and it was. They didn't have to go. It was something I wanted them to do on their own and of their own volition. But of course, in that kind of environment, if any of you have experienced that before, teachers often feel that even if we say that the PLC is voluntary, their non-attendance will be counted against them, or if their reluctance would be seen as a bad attitude. So the PLCs were largely where I learned a lot of things. Also, in my independent meetings with teachers, I went in to have conversations about teaching, about strategies, about learning techniques. They were used to meetings between them and the instructional coach being about nothing but planning out units, meticulously, ad nauseum planning out units. This school has probably some of the best laid out unit plans I've ever seen, But the philosophy behind that is teachers aren't trusted, so they are held accountable through their unit plans, and teachers aren't trusted to go off the cuff or do inquiry or to make decisions in the minute. Therefore, it's more that there has to be a script and a prescription. That's the point of unit plans at my school. So I saw my role take on a kind of aspect of double agency, meaning like a spy, a double agent. I had to seem to toe the line while introducing subversive concepts at the same time. And what I realized in the end was, although that was a kind of way of handling it, what I really needed to do was espouse the notion of democracy in teaching and democracy among our students. Because just as the teachers weren't trusted by the administration, some parts of the administration, the students weren't trusted by the teachers. It rolled downhill. And so when we went into COVID, one of the most urgent things for teachers, ironically, was the need to assess their students and their feeling of this need, and yet at the same time a lack of trust of the students. And I realized that because the school hadn't been enculturated in the right way, the students and the teachers hadn't taken on aspects of democratic community, they didn't trust them. Students in Denmark famously are allowed to take exams with the internet, and they're called open book exams, but it's just the old-fashioned name. I wanted to get us to a place where we trusted our community to do that, both in terms of students taking tests and in terms of teachers getting professional development, because the professional development at the school was very prescriptive, to say the least. So what I was able to accomplish before COVID was I did get observations and coaching cycles going, and I kept records of them, which hadn't been done before. I was able to start a PLC, which the teachers voted for our first semester PLC to be focused on classroom management because that's what they believe the administration wanted. But I learned from that, and now I know in the future to kind of like get their thoughts more in there. Although I asked for their thoughts, I need to kind of nudge them a little bit further away from admin desires if that's what they want to do. I was able to revise that process of coaching meetings. I wasn't going in there to see unit plans. I created a new script, which was basically a brainstorming sheet for them to talk about different teaching ideas and different ways of moving in the classroom that did touch on the unit plans a little bit, but I demanded that, for example, we talk about students and student performance first. How are things going with your students? And if that ended up taking the whole meeting for a long conversation on students, great. I don't need to talk about unit plans every week. And I was able to plan the PD for semester 2 optimistically, although that, and I think that from my lessons learned in the first semester, we were moving in the right direction, but never got a chance to be put into action because, of course, COVID took over. And life has been defined by this. Where we are since February 5th, when we went on our mid-year break, we have been in lockdown ever since returning, and I've been here since February 5th. And this allowed for a few things, though. There was this kind of silver lining. I hate to say that, but there was a silver lining in terms of learning that came from COVID, because all of a sudden we had to change everything, and all of a sudden my skill set became very valuable for the school. And one of the things that I'll say, well, there was a sudden interest in blended learning. So there was a sudden interest in blended learning, and what I was going to say was my principal slowed me down. I wanted to go immediately asynchronous, student self-directed, get the ATLs and the skills in. We were ordered by the Chinese state not to teach new content. I said, fantastic. Let's teach skills. Let's teach the things that really matter. Although I didn't say that to anyone's face. But the rest of the school kind of panicked. The teachers panicked. What are we going to do? We have to give summatives. We have to teach content. What if we don't do a good enough job? And it really was fear that defined what they were thinking about in terms of teaching under COVID. So slowly that kind of, we weaned them off of that, and we moved into, I think, more meaningful learning. Because one of the things that was great was that we lost all oversight. The academic team at our school, the directors, they are much more focused on the elementary school because that's the money-making division. And we're a new, small, growing division. So because the new principal and I ironically, are trusted. And I think it's more that they trust him and he trusts me rather than they trust me. I still think they're looking for me to be a subversive. We got a chance to infiltrate the status quo. So new resources like Global Online Academy. I brought in Cafino, if you know her, and some of the things that she's recommending, which is not what the status quo is about. Techniques and strategies from Gusky, Carrie Fasser, getting them focused on formative assessments and things like that. And then I really did, and I'm going to show you how I did this. I wanted to bring in the philosophies of Dewey and Freire because I really, like I didn't require this of anybody, and I didn't ask them to do this. But if they wanted to, they could take a look at the site, at the resources I gave them, and then every now and then there will be that one or two early adapters or adopters who will read the little snippet from Freire and start thinking about democracy in schooling. So that was really my kind of my goal with that presentation. So, like I said, there was no kind of organization in regard to observation. So here's an early observation that I did. And I'm sorry, before COVID happened, the reason I'm doing the video like this is that I didn't take enough film and get around. I was really hoping to do that in the second semester to, once I had the school sussed out and figured out my place there, I was going to start doing a lot of recording for a regular film. But I ended up, in my home office, which is just off my kitchen, as you can see, and used to be a little girl's bedroom. See the pink wallpaper? And I ended up here for the next couple of months. So here's just an observation from one of the English teachers, and just kind of putting it into a regularized format, talking about commendations and recommendations, a running narrative, photos to look back on. That was pretty new for the teachers. And this is another setup that was a little bit different because a little bit more formal in terms of this was my coaching cycle. It's one of the observations from my coaching cycle in our course. Giving her resources, talking to her about the focus. Like she actually boiled it down to several students that she really wanted to talk about classroom management in regard to. But then also I was giving her ideas for, she actually has a lot of strategies that she used. So I wanted her to boil down several of those strategies and reflect on the impact in her classroom, if she would make any revisions, and what notes would go along with that. So there's a little bit of the things that I was doing in there. And this is an example. This was the rough draft or the final draft before the second semester started of what professional development would look like in the second semester, with teachers teaching teachers in there, a book study group, Wednesday sessions from 4 to 5 every Wednesday. That's when we meet for professional development. I was getting teacher input, and I was getting teachers to volunteer to do these things, the TTTs and other things, to lead book studies. One of our teachers, Nicole, was going to do a book study on parent communication, and people were getting involved, right? It was getting there. But COVID, of course, happened, and then everything shut down from there. So really quickly, some of the things that happened. I should have showed you that, but that's fine. Some of the things that happened under COVID was I started sending newsletters, and I'm not going to show you the newsletters, but they started slow, and our teachers, maybe I will show you just really quickly, and our teachers actually wanted newsletters like this, put out as PDFs with links, to talk about resources and to talk about what they could do in the blended learning environment. And what I did was the first few were not so explicit. They were just lists of resources. And then around week 6, I started directly addressing democratic engagement with their classrooms, because the whole point being, I'm sure you can understand, if they're out there, you can't control them anyway, if they have to show up for Zoom sessions on their own and perhaps take formative assessments that you can make sure that are valid and fair, they're equitable, you're going to have to trust the students a bit. You're going to have to create a sense of community. And not only for that reason, but just developing a sense of community in these strange times at a distance when everyone is stressed is also very important. So I first started addressing that in one of the newsletters. And then finally, I created a website for my teachers that was supposed to do two things. It's hopefully doing two things as we speak. One, it discusses assessment in the greater context of democracy. And you could see, again, just like many websites in blended learning would be set up, I have an introductory video like Kim sends us every week or is at the top of every of Kim's units. And then I get into, on this page, I get into the deeper theory. So we got Paolo Freire and what he's talking about and his basic ideas. And of course, he's the guy who came up with the idea of praxis, the separation from practice, in order to reflect on theory and then go back to your your practice, and learn a little bit of, like, kind of like complicate your practice from that period of reflection. And so COVID-19 lockdown as an opportunity for praxis, trying to get people to think the bigger picture. And then we kind of like narrow it down a little bit with big questions, Thomas Gusky, et cetera, et cetera. And so this was supposed to bring in those big ideas, but then also give them a model for if they want to create a blended learning website for their classes, this could be it. So I showed them how to modulate it by putting in the actual modules, module 1, 2, 3. And of course, wayfinding and finding your way around a website is also very important. So each of these buttons will navigate. You can click it and it'll navigate to that website. So mindsets, more videos, Thomas Gusky actually talking here. So you create the link, talking about progressive and conservative views of assessment, putting it into the greater context of Quintilian, the Roman philosopher, and then getting the last couple of pages are far more concrete. So whereas I think most teachers will just go here, these are some examples for how I can do online assessment, and here are some instructional videos, and here are some best practices for how to do that. Most of them will do that, but I'm still getting the democracy in there because I did a highlight on gradual release of responsibility, or GRR, which is very closely related to the democratic process. We gradually release responsibility to our classes by developing the democratic skills and sense of civics and sense of responsibility and duty that they need to have a successful community. And then just the resources, right? And again, Kim, you got credit here. Remote learning from Maduro Learning, and then Global Online Academy. Great link here, MYP chat from Stephen Taylor at WAB. And then all of these other things. Again, expert advice, different kinds of technology, several of my old examples of how to do assessments online, and other examples, all for the teachers. And for us, I'll just point out really quickly, I matched these to a number of the ISTE standards for coaches, and that is one of the examples of a major artifact that I created. And I've been speaking very quickly, and I have other artifacts to show you, but I've got to pull it there. I'm sure I'm already over 8 minutes. So this is going to be the one that I turn in no matter what, because I'm not doing another one today. I would like to thank all of you for listening and being patient with my form of this presentation. Thank you, Kim, for being generous and accommodating me. I hope all of you are safe wherever you are in the world. I hope all of your families are safe. And I really hope to meet you in an online reunion or an online prom. Maybe we could do a prom, or face-to-face at a fair or in a school someday. Thank you all for listening. Have a great second half of this crazy spring.